Have you ever wondered what secrets a billionaire hides behind the glow of his laptop screen? When power sits in the palm of one man, even a glance at his password could shift empires. But what happens when the eye's daring enough to steal that? Key belonged not to a rival CEO, but to his own maid, a silent shadow in his mansion, with motives far darker than anyone suspects. You are about to step into a world where silence is never empty, and every glance hides a motive. This story will take you deep into the gilded walls of a billionaire's empire, where the shine of wealth conceals shadows darker than night. What begins as a single suspicious glance, a maid daring to watch her master type his password, spirals into a web of betrayal, ambition, and secrets powerful enough to shatter lives. Expect shocking revelations buried in encrypted files, unexpected twists that turn loyalty into suspicion, and the hidden wisdom of knowing that trust is the sharpest weapon of all. At the center of it all stands a mysterious figure that made her story unknown, her true purpose concealed, her every move tightening the suspense. What she seeks is more than just a password. What she finds will change everything. Ethan Veyron was a man whose name carried weight in every boardroom across the globe. At 42, the billionaire CEO had built a technology empire on secret algorithms that shaped industries, investments that toppled rivals, and innovations whispered to hold the power of nations. His life was walled by marble floors, chandeliers that sparkled like frozen fire, and a penthouse mansion overlooking a city that never truly slept. To the world, he was untouchable. To those within his home, he was a figure of obsession and fear. Among the quiet staff moving through his glass corridors was Amara, the young maid. She was striking in her silent skin, the shade of midnight velvet, eyes that flickered with unspoken thoughts, and a presence that made her seem both invisible and unforgettable. She had been in his service for only a few months, yet her movements carried the grace of someone watching, waiting, calculating. The mansion itself was a fortress disguised as luxury. Security cameras blinked in every corner, biometric locks guarded every room, and still, Ethan trusted no one. His laptop, a sleek silver machine, was the single object he treated as sacred. He never left it unattended, never typed a password without shielding the screen. But in the rare moments when Amara dusted the polished desk or refilled the glass of bourbon by his side, her eyes would drift not to the skyline or the glittering trophies of success, but to the subtle flicker of his fingers on the keyboard. To anyone else, it was routine. To her, it was opportunity. Behind her quiet eyes lay a hidden story, desires unspoken, fears disguised, and a secret so pressing that even a glimpse of forbidden numbers on a glowing screen might change her destiny forever. It began with a flicker of hesitation, a pause so small it could have been mistaken for clumsiness. Ethan Veyron sat in his leather chair, the glow of his laptop washing across his face like pale moonlight. His fingers danced over the keys, a string of characters only. He knew. Yet just beyond his shoulder, Amara moved silently, feather duster in hand, dusting the frame of an old oil painting. Her eyes lingered not on the artwork, but on the mirrored reflection of his screen. She tilted her head just slightly, as though studying a smudge of dust invisible to anyone else. But what she was truly studying was the rhythm of his keystrokes. Ethan, absorbed in an urgent email, didn't notice at first. He rarely did. He believed his walls were thick, his locks unbreakable, his wealth impenetrable. But tonight, something unsettled him. He caught the faintest shift in the air, kind you feel when someone is watching too closely. Slowly, without raising suspicion, he closed the lid of his laptop and looked up. Amara had already lowered her gaze, dusting with mechanical precision, her expression unreadable. For a moment, Ethan wondered if he had imagined it, but then it happened again. The next evening, as he logged into his encrypted system, he noticed her shadow reflected in the glass cabinet behind him. She was arranging crystal decanters, but her head was tilted ever so slightly toward him, her body still. Ethan's eyes narrowed. His password wasn't just a combination of letters and numbers. It was access to data that could topple competitors, ruin reputations, and perhaps even alter the balance of entire markets. No one was allowed near it. Why would a maid be interested? The thought wormed its way into his mind like a splinter. She wasn't just cleaning, she was observing. Every subtle glance, every pause in her movement, now seemed intentional. He replayed moments he had overlooked before. The time she lingered a little longer near his desk, the way her gaze often darted toward him when he typed. But what he didn't realize was that Amara's every glance was deliberate. Behind her composed silence, Amara carried a weight heavier than any feather duster. She had grown up far from the glittering skyline of Ethan's empire, in a place where opportunity was scarce and secrets were currency. She had not come to his mansion by chance. Each step she took on the polished marble floors was part of a silent mission, a mission no one yet suspected. Still, Ethan could not confront her outright. What if he was wrong? Firing her without cause could draw unnecessary attention. And what if she wasn't alone? What if her presence in his house was a piece of something larger, an infiltration carefully designed to get close to him? The tension deepened. That night, Ethan tested her. He deliberately logged into his laptop at the dining table, where reflections bounced off the glass windows. As he typed, he shifted his body slightly, just enough to widen the angle of visibility. Amara appeared with a tray, setting down his late-night coffee. For a fleeting second, her eyes locked on the keyboard. She masked it quickly, lowering her gaze. But Ethan had seen it this time unmistakable, sharp, hungry. A chill traced his spine. He closed the laptop slowly, pretending to sip his coffee. "You've been working here for how long now?" He asked casually. Amara did not flinch. 3 months, sir." Her voice was smooth, unshaken, as though rehearsed. "And do you find it comfortable?" His tone was careful, almost playful. She smiled faintly. "The house is beautiful. More than I could ever imagine." Ethan studied her face, searching for cracks in the mask. But there were none. She was practiced, controlled, too perfect. That night, long after the house had gone silent, Ethan replayed the scene in his mind. He opened his safe, checked his files, confirmed his securities. Nothing seemed tampered with. And yet, unease gnawed at him. He began to wonder, what would a maid want with his password? Was she working for a rival? A journalist? Or something more sinister? Meanwhile, in the solitude of her small servant's room, Amara sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her folded hands. Her heart pounded with the memory of the numbers and letters she had almost but not quite seen. She knew the risks. One mistake, one wrong move, and she could be exposed. But she also knew what that password could unlock. Answers to questions that had haunted her family for years. Truths buried under the empire of Ethan Veyron's wealth. Little did she know, Ethan had already decided something. He would no longer ignore her. The game had begun. Ethan Veyron was not a man who left things to chance. The more he thought about Amara's subtle glances, the more a quiet paranoia began to bloom. He had built his empire on foresight, predicting markets, anticipating competitors, staying 3 moves ahead. And yet, here in his own fortress, a maid had unsettled him with nothing more than a look. He began to test her without her knowing. He'd leave the laptop open with meaningless spreadsheets and step away, pretending to take a call. He'd type random keystrokes as though entering a password, gauging her reflection in nearby glass. Every time, she seemed calm, dutiful, but Ethan could feel it. A presence behind her eyes, a hunger that did not belong to mere employment. What he didn't realize was that Amara wasn't working alone in her thoughts. She carried memories sharper than knives. Her mother's whispered warnings about a man named Veyron, her father's mysterious disappearance after exposing corporate scandals in the press. Ethan's company had been at the center of those rumors, though no proof had ever surfaced. And so she had taken this job not as a servant, but as a seeker of truth. Ethan's world wasn't limited to him and Amara. He had confidants, people whose loyalty was measured not by trust, but by contracts and paychecks. One of them was Marcus Hawley, his head of security, a man with a scar across his cheek and eyes that missed nothing. Ethan summoned him discreetly. "There's a maid," Ethan said, swirling his glass of bourbon. "I want her background revisited, every detail, quietly." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Amara?" She cleared the checks. "Clean record." "Check again," Ethan insisted. "She's watching me." "Watching my laptop." Marcus smirked faintly. "Paranoia isn't like you, boss." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Just do it." Meanwhile, Amara sensed the shift. The air around the mansion thickened. The guard's eyes lingered longer on her when she passed. The other staff cooks, cleaners seemed more cautious, whispering less in her presence. She knew suspicion was crawling closer. And yet, she couldn't stop. Every night she replayed in her mind the fragments of letters, the faint patterns of Ethan's keystrokes. She was close, so close to unlocking the truth. The deeper she went, the stranger things became. She noticed how Ethan would retreat to his study late at night, emerging with a face lined by shadows, as though burdened by secrets no wealth could erase. Once she overheard a tense phone call, his voice low, sharp. "If these files leak, it won't just be me. Entire governments will collapse." The words struck her like thunder. What was hidden on that laptop? One night, another figure entered. The story. Claire Duval, Ethan's public relations director, elegant and calculating, with a smile as sharp as glass. She arrived unannounced, carrying folders of press drafts. As she walked past Amara, her perfume laced the air with power. Claire noticed her, eyes narrowing briefly before turning back to Ethan. "Your staff is attentive," Claire remarked casually, as though probing. Ethan's gaze flicked toward Amara, then back to Claire. "Attentive is good. It means they know their place." But Claire's glance lingered a moment too long, and Amara felt a shiver run down her spine. Was Claire an ally? Or another threat? The mystery deepened. Every answer opened new questions. Why was Ethan so protective of his files? Why had Claire hinted at awareness? Why was Marcus watching her more closely now, as though waiting for her to stumble? Late that night, Amara stood in the dim glow of the kitchen, staring at her reflection. In the polished silver of a teapot, she whispered to herself, "This isn't just about him. This is about what he's hiding. About what happened to Father." Her hands trembled slightly, but her resolve hardened not in his study. Ethan pored over encrypted documents, his mind racing. He didn't know her past, but he could feel her intent. Something was coming, and it wasn't just curiosity from a servant. It was personal, and yet even he couldn't guess the full truth, because what Amara sought wasn't money. It wasn't blackmail. It was justice buried under years of silence and sealed files, locked away behind a billionaire's carefully guarded password. But Ethan wasn't about to let anyone in, not without a fight, and so tension thickened, like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. The billionaire and the maid moved like pieces on a chessboard, each pretending not to notice the other's strategy, while unseen forces Claire with her sly smiles. Marcus with his sharpened suspicions shifted. Into place, the mansion was no longer just a house. It was a battlefield waiting for the first shot. The night it all broke open, rain lashed against the tall glass windows of the mansion like an omen. Ethan sat alone in his study, the glow of his laptop reflecting against the storm. His instincts screamed that something was coming. He had tightened security, ordered Marcus to sweep the staff, even warned Claire to prepare for leaks, but none of it eased the coil of unease in his chest. That was when he heard it, the faintest creak of the floorboard behind him. He turned sharply. Amara stood at the threshold, her hands clasped, her eyes steady. She was no longer pretending to dust or serve. Tonight, she carried herself differently. Her silence was no longer submission. It was confrontation. "What do you want?" Ethan asked, his tone sharper than the storm outside. Voice was calm, but her words struck like knives. "The password, Mr. Veyron. I need it." For a moment, the room froze. The rain outside seemed to vanish, swallowed by the thunder in Ethan's chest. He rose slowly from his chair, studying her. "You have no idea what you're asking for." "I do," she replied, her eyes unflinching. "What's locked in there isn't just numbers and profits. It's the truth. My father, he disappeared after investigating you. His files vanished, his name destroyed, and your company rose higher. I want to know why." Ethan's jaw tightened. At last, the shadows around her motive lifted, and the revelation stung. This wasn't about greed. It wasn't even about him. It was about history. Buried under corporate secrets he thought no one could ever reach. But what she didn't realize was that she was right. The laptop didn't just hold financial data. It held encrypted documents, records of political deals, bribes, cover-ups, things that, if revealed, would ruin not only him, but entire governments tied to his empire. "Leave now," Ethan warned, his voice low. "Walk away, and I'll forget this conversation ever happened. But if you step closer—" She shook her head, her resolve unbreakable. "I've come too far. I won't leave without the truth." And then, as if fate demanded, escalation, Marcus appeared at the door. His gun holstered, his eyes sharp. He had overheard enough. "Boss?" he asked carefully, his gaze flicking between them. Ethan's silence spoke volumes. Amara turned toward Marcus. "You don't have to protect him. He's hiding more than. You know, this isn't just about him. It's about the people he's destroyed." For a fleeting second, something flickered in Marcus's expression. Doubt. Years of loyalty weighed against the possibility that the man he served wasn't just ruthless, but corrupt. The tension fractured into something dangerous. Claire's sudden arrival only tightened the noose. She stepped in, eyes glinting. "So it's true. The maid's been watching. And now, here we are." Ethan's empire stood on the brink, and for the first time, the people around him were no longer pieces on his chessboard. They were players in their own right. This was the point of no return. Got the password, the files, the truth. All of it hung in the air like lightning, waiting to strike. Whether Amara succeeded or Ethan silenced her, nothing would ever be the same again. The storm outside broke with a crack of thunder, and inside the mansion, the storm of truth erupted. Ethan could no longer deny the weight of Amara's words, her father's fate, the buried files, the empire he had built on shadows. Yet the choice before him was brutal. Protect his kingdom of lies, or face the ruinous light of truth. Didn't flinch. Her determination pierced through the marble walls and golden chandeliers, reminding everyone in that room that wealth could buy silence, but never innocence. Marcus lowered his eyes, torn between duty and conscience, while Claire's calculating silence hinted at shifting loyalties. Ethan finally spoke, his voice low, almost resigned. "If you open that laptop, the world will burn. But maybe it deserves to." In that moment, power shifted. The billionaire was no longer the master of the house. The maid, once invisible, now stood as judge and executioner. The story ends not with victory, but with revelation. That truth is the most dangerous password of all. Wealth may build empires, But secrets are their foundation, and when the walls crack, even the strongest fortress falls.